In September 2019, the quiet life of Sydney Watkins, a 35-year-old elementary school teacher, was shattered when her body was found in her two-bedroom home. The scene was brutal, showing clear signs of a struggle and multiple stab wounds on Sydney's body. As detectives worked on the case, a disturbing story unfolded, one of a divorce that went terribly wrong, a custody battle out of control, and a father pushed to the edge. Hello and welcome to our channel. If you are new here, please subscribe and press the bell notification. Now get back to the video. Mark Thornton, born on July 12, 1982, was the only child of Robert and Linda Thornton. From a young age, Mark demonstrated exceptional drive and competitiveness, excelling both academically and athletically. Despite his achievements, his childhood was overshadowed by his father's severe discipline and volatile temper. Robert Thornton's rigid and aggressive approach to parenting significantly influenced Mark, instilling in him a need for control and leaving him with deep-seated insecurities. Mark's outward appearance was one of confidence and charm, traits that masked the emotional struggles stemming from his tumultuous relationship with his father. The strict and often unpredictable nature of Robert Thornton shaped Mark's personality, leading him to grapple with his emotions and self-worth. In contrast, Sydney Watkins, born on March 3, 1984 in New Haven, Connecticut, was renowned for her kindness and empathy. Sydney's academic success and her pursuit of a career in education were driven by her genuine desire to make a positive impact on others' lives. Her nurturing disposition and commitment to helping those around her stood in stark contrast to Mark's experiences, highlighting the divergent paths shaped by their early lives and personal challenges. Mark and Sydney's relationship began with intense romance, but as Mark's work demands grew, Sydney felt increasingly neglected and lonely. The birth of their daughter, Sanda Thornton, on April 17, 2011, brought temporary joy to their lives. In January 2018, the couple's divorce proceedings began. What started as a seemingly straightforward separation quickly turned bitter. Mark contested every aspect of the divorce, accusing Sydney of being an unfit mother and criticizing her parenting style. Sydney, in turn, presented evidence of Mark's controlling behavior and volatile temper, arguing that he was not fit to have primary custody of their daughter. The case exposed the deep rifts and unresolved issues between Mark and Sydney. Their personal struggles, combined with their conflicting views on parenting, created a volatile situation. Tragically, this led to a violent end that shocked everyone who knew them. After nearly a year of legal wrangling, the court finally issued its ruling in November 2018. Sydney was granted primary physical custody, with Mark receiving generous visitation rights, leaving Mark feeling defeated and resentful. This custody ruling would set in motion a series of events that would lead to tragedy. Following the divorce settlement, Mark's behavior became increasingly hostile and erratic, leading to constant conflict between him and Sydney. His interactions with Zena became a source of conflict, with Mark making snide remarks about Sydney's parenting and manipulating her into wanting more time with him. Sydney, deeply concerned about the impact of Mark's behavior on Zena, tried to shield their daughter from the growing tension by maintaining a calm demeanor during handovers and enrolling Zena in play therapy sessions. Sydney found herself increasingly fearful of Mark's unpredictable moods and installed a security system in their home and informed Zena's school about the situation. She also reached out to her brother Michael to help temper Mark's hostility. As the conflict between her parents escalated, Zena's sunny disposition began to dim, and she became withdrawn at school and prone to emotional outbursts. In August 2019, Mark filed a motion for modification of the custody agreement, seeking primary physical custody of Zena. Sydney, armed with documentation of Mark's erratic behavior and reports from Zena's therapist, filed a counter-motion requesting supervised visitation for Mark. The court scheduled a hearing for September 20th, giving both parties just over a month to prepare their cases. The impending legal showdown ratcheted up the tension between Mark and Sydney to unprecedented levels. Mark became obsessed with winning the case, viewing it as his last chance to assert control over his family. Sydney, meanwhile, grew increasingly anxious about the possibility of losing custody of Zena, fearing for her daughter's emotional well-being if placed primarily in Mark's care. As the hearing date approached, Mark's grip on reality began to slip, and he stopped showing up to work, using all his time to build his case against Sydney. He began following Sydney and Zena, taking photos of their activities and interpreting innocent interactions as evidence of Sydney's unfitness as a mother. During this time, Mark's interactions with Zena became increasingly disturbing, with him interrogating her about Sydney's activities, making disparaging comments about her mother, and promising a better life once he won custody. 3 days before a custody hearing, Mark reached his breaking point after a difficult handover with Zena. Believing that Sydney had turned his daughter against him, he decided to take matters into his own hands and plan the murder of his ex-wife, Sydney. On September 15, 2019, Mark left his apartment, careful to avoid security cameras and potential witnesses, and drove a rental car to Sydney's house. Mark arrived at Sydney's house just before dawn, using a secretly made house key. He grabbed Sydney's arm and fought back fiercely, crashing into furniture and knocking items off shelves. Sydney managed to break free momentarily, running towards the hallway. Mark pursued her, tackling her to the ground and bringing the knife down repeatedly. Sydney's screams were cut short as the blade found its mark again and again. As soon as it began, it was over. Mark stood over Sydney's lifeless body, his rage giving way to shock as the reality of what he had done began to sink in. The knife slipped from his blood-soaked hands, clattering to the floor. Mark rushed to retrieve his bag of supplies, frantically trying to clean up the worst of the blood. In his haste and shock, Mark made critical mistakes, missing several blood spatters, leaving partial fingerprints, and failing to notice that Sydney had managed to grab a tuft of his hair. Karen Mitchell, Sydney's close friend and fellow teacher, arrived at the house at 15:59. She noticed smears on the wall and called out as she climbed the stairs. Karen discovered Sydney's body in the upstairs hallway and dialed 911. Within minutes, the peaceful suburban street was transformed into a chaotic crime scene, with police cars and ambulances crowded the driveway. Neighbors gathered on their lawns, watching in shock as police tape went up around Sydney's home. Detective Lisa Hawkins of the police department led an investigation into a brutal murder case involving Sydney Watkins. With 15 years of experience in homicide cases, she recognized the signs of a crime of passion and made Mark Thornton the primary suspect. The investigation quickly moved, with forensics team collecting blood samples, fingerprints, and other trace evidence. Mark's computer revealed his obsessive research into custody laws and methods of committing untraceable murder. As the evidence mounted, Mark Thornton became a potentially dangerous fugitive who might attempt to reach his daughter. Unaware that he was already the prime suspect, Mark attempted to establish his alibi by returning to his apartment, meticulously cleaning his clothes and shoes. He then made several calls, including one to Sydney's phone, leaving a message asking about picking up his daughter later that day. However, his careful planning began to unravel when a neighbor noticed the unfamiliar rental car parked near Sydney's house in the early morning hours. The trial of Mark Thornton began 6 months after Sydney's murder. The prosecution presented a compelling case built on both forensic evidence and a disturbing psychological profile of the defendant. Forensic experts testified about the DNA evidence found at the crime scene, including the hairs matched to Mark and the blood spatter patterns consistent with the prosecution's account of the murder. The rental car evidence was also presented, along with security camera footage showing a figure matching Mark's description near Sydney's house on the morning of the crime. After a 3-week trial and 2 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty of first-degree murder. Mark Thornton showed little remorse and continued to blame Sydney and the court system for his actions, claiming he had only wanted to protect his daughter. The judge delivered a scathing rebuke before announcing the sentence, stating that Thornton displayed a shocking lack of empathy and an inability to put his child's needs before his own desires. So, what do you think of our video? Let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from me again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go. Thanks for watching.